Hey, I'm Dr. Hines. Glad you could join me virtually. Going to show you a little bit about how to use these electronic balances here and proper techniques for that, and little quirky things about the electronic balance. The first task that we have, I'm looking at the lab manual that you all should have access to, and it says we're supposed to weigh a 50 milliliter beaker that is clean and dry on electronic balance. And then we're going to use a different electronic balance to weigh the beaker again. So I have two electronic balances set up. These are different brand names right here. And when you turn them on, they typically go through a little self-test thing. So I recommend that you turn them on before you're ready to do your experiment. And I'll just say kind of warm themselves up. This one right here is actually reading something. This would be common for an electronic balance. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press the tare button here, and that's going to set it to 0. And you can see that it may not read exactly 0, and so I try not to chase the rabbit in terms of like trying to make it read 0 in the last decimal place. The other thing to consider is that if there's any kind of air currents, it will cause some fluctuations in the balance. So the fact that we have 3 decimal places, that's actually quite a few decimal places, and that's why I typically don't chase that last decimal place there. But anyway, so we're gonna weigh a beaker, okay? You'll be using these 50 milliliter beakers quite often. So I'm gonna put it on one electronic balance, and this is what it weighs. I believe you are supposed to record this value in your lab manual. You may even want to write down exactly what electronic balance that you used. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to this electronic balance and we'll weigh it on it. And what you see is that the readings were pretty close to each other. But one rule I can say about weighing things is whatever electronic balance that you use, that is the one that you should stick with. You don't want any kind of small amounts of error encountered in your measurements because you switched to a different electronic balance, okay? So I'm going to use this really brand new nice balance right here just simply because it looks good. And it looks like the task that I need to do here is I need to record the mass of another 50 milliliter beaker. So I used this one right here, but now I'm going to swap to a different 50 milliliter beaker. And you're thinking, well, maybe they're all 50 milliliter beakers. Shouldn't they weigh all the same? If I accidentally borrow somebody else's beaker and I'm relying on the mass of it, that's not going to be very accurate. So one of the things that you have to remember is that each item that you have probably has a very unique value of mass on it. So I'm going to come over to this electronic balance right here. I'm going to tare it to make sure it reads 0 again. And I guess perhaps once again show you that electronic balances weigh differently. And again, this one here, I don't know, it's an old balance.Maybe there's air currents blowing on it. I'm going to tare it one more time and that's it. I'm not going to chase the rabbit anymore. So I'm weighing the beaker, this is a different beaker on this balance. And now I'm going to move it over to this other electronic balance. And so you should be recording these values. And what we're trying to show you is that different balances will give you different values, and different beakers are going to give you different values for your mass. So now I'm going to kind of pretty much just finish this up by weighing out some salt. And the procedure says that I'm supposed to weigh out 0.5 grams of salt. So I've got the salt right here, nothing really special. This is just all about how you're supposed to use the electronic balance and doing it correctly. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pour some salt into a beaker, okay? I hesitate to pour this out. I mean, what you do not want to do, okay? A lot of people will be tempted to put a beaker or a weighing dish or something like that on the electronic balance. And you can always hit your tare button and set it to 0. That way I don't need to worry about the mass of the actual weighing container itself. A lot of people will be tempted to just pour their chemical into their dish. I typically don't like to do that because you don't know if you're going to spill it everywhere. And so that's why I'm going to pour some salt into a beaker. And again, we're in Louisiana, so imagine if all the salt was all clumped together and you start to pour it out, it's going to go pfft, and you're going to get way more than 0.5 grams of salt in there. And I can tell you already that this is probably way more than 0.5 grams of salt. So anyway, this one here is finally starting to read 0 on the tare, so I'm good with that. So I'm going to weigh out 0.5 grams on here. And, you know, when you read through a chemistry procedure, it's going to tell you to weigh things out or get some specific volume of liquids. Personally, I don't spend a lot of time trying to get exactly 0.500 grams of salt, okay? I'm going to say this expression quite often, don't chase the rabbit. Just get something that's fairly close to what you want. Now, I have no idea whether this is going to be 0.5 grams or not, so that's why I'm kind of using the spatula, and I can just kind of sprinkle it in there, and you can already see that that's about 1/5 of the way to where I want to be. So I'm just kind of sprinkling that in there, and I'm a little bit past halfway, so just gonna be a little bit careful on the next one here. Try to get off to the side so you can. Ooh, I'm not gonna press my luck. I'm gonna go with 0.497, and I'm gonna call it right there, 0.497. It's not worth my time to chase that last decimal place on there. Okay. All right. So that finishes up all the weighing process. One of the nice things about these little plastic dishes is that you can kind of fold them up like this, and you can perhaps you can pour this into some sort of a reaction container or something like that. And it's very convenient for doing that. All right, there you go. So there's weighing out 0.5 grams of salt.